He cheated and kicked her out, but went pale when she arrived with her lawyer. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. I never thought this would happen to me. My name is Claire Benson, and I thought I was in a happy relationship with Mark Evans. He seemed perfect, charming, and caring. For 3 years, we shared everything, our apartment, our dreams, and even quiet Sunday mornings together. I trusted him completely, never imagining that the person I loved could hurt me in such a cruel way. The day I found out about the affair is a day I will never forget. I noticed small changes at first. He would get defensive when I asked about his work, his phone seemed glued to his hand, and he started staying late for meetings more often. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just being paranoid. But deep down, something didn't feel right. Finally, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I followed my instincts and discovered he was seeing someone else, a coworker he had claimed was just a friend. The pain hit me like a punch in the stomach. I felt betrayed, foolish, and completely blind to the signs I had ignored. When I confronted him, I expected anger, shame, or even an apology. Instead, I got something far worse. Mark denied everything at first, trying to twist the truth and make me doubt myself. But when I didn't back down, he snapped. He told me I had no right to accuse him and that I should leave the apartment immediately. Just like that, he kicked me out. I grabbed my suitcase, tears blurring my vision, and stepped into the hallway that had once felt like home. Everything we had built together, every memory we shared, suddenly felt like lies. Standing outside the apartment, I couldn't stop shaking. My mind replayed every laugh, every quiet night, every plan we had made. How had I not seen the truth before? How could someone I trusted so completely treat me like I was nothing? The humiliation was overwhelming. I felt exposed, powerless, and heartbroken all at once. I had no idea how I would move forward, but I knew one thing for certain: I couldn't let this break me. As I walked away, suitcase in hand, I promised myself that this wouldn't be the end of my story. I wasn't going to let him win. The betrayal hurt more than I could have imagined, but deep down, a small spark of determination ignited. I would find a way to reclaim my life, my dignity, and my peace. That day, as the door closed behind me, I realized that this was only the beginning. After being kicked out, I moved back in with my parents. Their home felt safe, but I couldn't shake the humiliation and anger. I kept thinking about how easily Mark had thrown away everything we had. I trusted him completely, and he treated me like I meant nothing. Every corner of my mind replayed the betrayal, and I struggled to trust anyone or even myself. Worse, I heard from neighbors and mutual friends that Mark was already flaunting his new relationship in the apartment we had shared. He was throwing parties, laughing, and acting like nothing had happened, like I had never been there. It was a punch to the heart. Every photo, every piece of furniture, every little memory he had shared with me now seemed stolen from me. The pain of seeing him so careless and happy with someone else made it almost unbearable. In those days, I felt lost. I didn't know how to process the anger, shame, and grief all at once. Nights were the hardest, lying awake, thinking about how I had trusted him, wondering if I would ever feel safe with anyone again. I felt small, defeated, and heartbroken, but my parents reminded me that I was not powerless. They reminded me who I was before Mark, and that I had strength I had forgotten. My best friend, Lila, became my anchor. She listened patiently as I poured out my frustration and tears, never judging, only reminding me that my life didn't have to end here. "Claire," she said one evening as we sat in the kitchen, "revenge doesn't have to be about hurting him back. It can be smart. It can be you rising above, taking your life back, and showing him what he lost." Her words stuck with me. For the first time since that day, I felt a spark of clarity. I realized I didn't need to stoop to his level. I needed to focus on myself, my future, and my own happiness. One evening, I sat on the floor of my old room, surrounded by boxes of memories from the life we had built together. I held a picture of us smiling on a vacation, and tears fell freely down my face. I cried for the betrayal, for the lies, and for the life I thought we had. Packing away our belongings felt like saying goodbye, not just to Mark, but to the illusion of him. Each item I put in a box was a step toward letting go of the pain and reclaiming control over my own life. Even in the middle of my heartbreak, I began to feel something I hadn't in weeks: determination. I knew I couldn't erase what happened, but I could decide how I responded. The humiliation and betrayal were real, but I refused to let them define me. I wouldn't let Mark's actions steal my future. Slowly, as I packed and cried, I felt myself preparing for what came next: a chance to rise, rebuild, and reclaim my life on my own terms. After the initial shock began to fade, I knew I couldn't let my emotions control me. I decided not to confront Mark immediately. Instead, I needed a plan, something smart and precise. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that his betrayal wasn't just about cheating. He had been manipulating money and hiding assets. If I wanted justice, I had to be prepared and informed. I reached out to David, my childhood friend, who had become a lawyer. David had always been someone I could trust, and now he became my anchor in this storm. We met quietly, and I explained everything: the affair, the apartment, the way Mark had treated me, and my suspicions about finances. David listened carefully, nodding, and advised me step by step on what to do. He didn't just give legal advice, he helped me think strategically, showing me how to gather evidence and protect myself without exposing my plans too soon. I started looking into Mark's financial records and found what I had suspected: he was hiding assets, moving money around accounts, and keeping documents that were legally mine under false pretenses. Every discovery made my anger grow, but it also gave me power. I realized that this betrayal went far beyond my heart; it was a calculated effort to control me financially. For the first time, I felt a sense of clarity. I wouldn't be powerless anymore. I wasn't just going to cry and walk away, I was going to reclaim what was mine, and I was going to do it carefully. With David's guidance, I began documenting everything meticulously. Emails, bank statements, contracts, anything that could prove Mark's deceit. I worked quietly, making sure no one knew what I was doing. Each piece of evidence was a small victory, a reminder that I was taking control of my life. I started to see a path forward, and with every day that passed, my resolve grew stronger. Emotionally, it was intense. Knowing that the person I had trusted the most could betray me in such a complete way was painful, but it also fueled my determination. I felt a mix of sadness, anger, and empowerment. I realized that revenge didn't have to be about causing him pain, it was about reclaiming my dignity, my life, and my future. By the end of the week, I had a clearer picture of everything Mark had done: not just the affair, but the hidden financial games, the lies, and the manipulation. I felt a sense of control I hadn't felt since the day he kicked me out. The betrayal had been deep, but I was ready. I knew that with careful planning, patience, and strategy, I could turn the tables. I wasn't just fighting for justice, I was fighting for myself, and this time I would not lose. After weeks of planning and gathering evidence, I decided it was time to focus on myself. I needed to rebuild my life quietly, without anyone knowing my next moves. I found a small studio apartment not far from my parents' house. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, a place where I could start fresh and take control of my life again. I poured all my energy into starting my own interior design business. At first, it was just small projects: friends, neighbors, and a few local clients. But I worked hard, stayed late into the night, and made sure every detail was perfect. Slowly, people began to notice my work. Positive reviews, referrals, and small articles in local magazines started to build my reputation. For the first time in months, I felt proud of something that was truly mine, built by my own hands and determination. Meanwhile, I started hearing whispers from mutual friends about Mark. He had begun asking questions, showing up at places I used to frequent, and generally seeming uneasy. It was subtle, but it was enough to know that he was noticing the change in me. I didn't need to confront him directly. I just needed to live my life, quietly growing stronger and more confident. The most powerful moments for me were the quiet nights alone in my studio. I would work on designs, sketching plans under soft lights, with the city humming outside my window. For the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. It wasn't a forced smile or one hiding pain. It was a real, deep smile that came from feeling capable, independent, and in control. Each completed project reminded me that I didn't need anyone else to define my worth or happiness. Emotionally, it was healing. Every late-night session, every satisfied client, and every small success built me back up. I felt my confidence returning, slowly erasing the fear and sadness that Mark's betrayal had caused. I was learning that true power wasn't in revenge through anger or confrontation, it was in quietly reclaiming my life, one step at a time. I also realized something else: by focusing on myself, I was making Mark's actions irrelevant. He had thought he could control me, humiliate me, and keep me weak. But now, he could see that none of that mattered. I was thriving, growing, and becoming someone he couldn't ignore. And the best part? I didn't need to say a single word to him. My life, my work, and my happiness were speaking for me. Those nights, working alone but feeling stronger than ever, taught me a lesson I will never forget: revenge doesn't always need to be loud or aggressive. Sometimes, the most powerful revenge is living well, proving to yourself and the world that betrayal can't break you, it can make you unstoppable. By now, I had built a solid foundation for my life, but I knew I wasn't done yet. It was time to prepare for the moment when I would confront Mark, not with anger, but with facts and evidence. I spent hours going through every piece of information I had gathered: emails that proved his lies, bank statements showing hidden transactions, and even recordings of him admitting the truth to friends. Each document, each detail, felt like a weapon in my hands, not for revenge and anger, but for justice. I met with David regularly, reviewing every step carefully. Together, we prepared legal documents for property and financial claims. Every contract, every form, and every claim was checked multiple times. I didn't want to leave anything to chance. This was more than just money or property, it was about proving that I wouldn't be destroyed by someone else's betrayal. I wanted to show that I could rise above, that I could reclaim everything he tried to take from me. While I was preparing, Mark remained oblivious to what was coming. One night, I heard from neighbors that he was throwing a party in the apartment we had shared, the very place where he had humiliated me. He was laughing, drinking, and showing off his new relationship as if nothing had happened. It hurt to hear that he was celebrating, thinking he had already won. But instead of breaking me, it made me more determined. I knew that when the right time came, I would turn the tables, and he wouldn't see it coming. Emotionally, those days were tense. I had to keep calm and collected while watching the person who had hurt me continue his careless life. The anger was still there, but it was focused and purposeful now. I reminded myself constantly, this isn't just about money or revenge, it's about proving that he can't destroy me. I wasn't acting out of spite, I was acting out of self-respect, justice, and the need to protect my future. I spent nights reviewing every detail, imagining the confrontation in my mind. I pictured walking into the apartment with David by my side, presenting the evidence calmly, and watching him realize that his lies and manipulations were no longer safe. That thought alone gave me strength. Each document I prepared, each piece of evidence I secured, made me feel more powerful and in control. By the time the day came, I was ready. I wasn't just reclaiming property or money, I was reclaiming my dignity, my peace, and my power. Mark might have thought he had everything under control, but he had no idea that I had prepared every step carefully. For the first time since he betrayed me, I felt fully confident. I wasn't just waiting for justice, I was creating it, one step at a time, and nothing could stop me. The day finally came. I walked into the apartment with David by my side, carrying the legal documents and evidence I had spent weeks preparing. The moment I stepped through the door, I could see Mark's face change. He went pale, frozen mid-conversation with his friends. He hadn't expected me to come back, and certainly not like this, confident, calm, and fully prepared. I didn't yell or make a scene. I simply placed the documents on the table and began to speak clearly, calmly, and firmly. I laid out everything: his cheating, the hidden finances, the manipulated accounts, and the lies he had told to everyone around him. I explained the evidence step by step, leaving no room for denial or excuses. Each fact hit him harder than the last. His confident smirk from before had disappeared, replaced by shock and panic. For a moment, he tried to gaslight me, trying to twist words and blame me, as if I was overreacting or imagining things. But I didn't flinch. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind, and now, nothing he said could shake me. Standing there, holding the proof of his betrayal in my hands, I felt taller than I had in months. I wasn't just a hurt ex-girlfriend, I was someone who had taken control of her life and refused to be crushed. Mark's friends looked between us nervously, sensing the tension and realizing for the first time that he had not been honest with them. The power had shifted completely. I felt a strange mix of emotions: vindication, relief, and even a small sense of satisfaction, but mostly, I felt free. For so long, he had held power over me through lies and manipulation. Now, I held the truth. Even as Mark stammered, trying to regain control of the situation, I remained calm. I didn't need to shout or argue, my evidence spoke for itself. Every lie he had told, every secret he had kept, was laid bare. He couldn't twist the facts anymore, and it was clear to everyone present. His attempts to intimidate or guilt me fell flat. I was unshaken, grounded in the reality that I had prepared meticulously and had nothing to fear. That moment marked a turning point. I realized that betrayal had its limits, and so did his control over me. By staying calm and strategic, I had reclaimed my power without losing myself. Seeing him pale, seeing him realize that I wasn't a victim anymore, was a quiet but powerful victory. I didn't need to say much: my presence, my preparation, and my unwavering stance said it all. For the first time, I truly understood that strength isn't about anger or revenge, it's about confidence, clarity, and the courage to face someone who tried to break you. That day, I stood taller than ever, not because I had to fight, but because I was finally free from the weight of his lies. After I presented the evidence, Mark's panic was immediate. He tried to explain away the documents, stammering excuses and half-truths. He moved quickly from one paper to another, hoping to hide something or distract from the facts I had laid out. But it was useless. Every email, every bank statement, every recording I had gathered was clear and undeniable. His scramble only made him look worse. Some of our mutual friends and colleagues were there, and I could see the shock on their faces. They had always thought Mark was charming and trustworthy, but now they were seeing the truth unfold. Whispers ran through the room as people realized how carefully he had manipulated situations and hidden his lies. For the first time, his carefully constructed image was cracking in front of everyone who had trusted him. I felt a deep sense of justice in that moment. The humiliation I had suffered, the sleepless nights, and the heartbreak, it all felt validated. I wasn't a victim anymore. I had taken control, and my careful planning had exposed the truth completely. Seeing him struggle while I remained calm gave me a quiet satisfaction that had nothing to do with cruelty. It was about fairness and reclaiming my life. Mark's voice grew desperate. He started pleading, trying to convince me to drop some of the claims, offering half-hearted apologies, and even attempting to manipulate my emotions. But I stayed firm. I didn't need to argue or raise my voice. I had no intention of letting him twist the situation again. I focused on the facts, on what was right, and on making sure justice was served, not on giving him the satisfaction of seeing me break emotionally. It was strange, but in that room, I felt a calm I hadn't felt in months. The fear and shame that had once weighed me down were gone. I realized that power comes from preparation and clarity, not anger. By staying composed, I maintained control over my own life and showed Mark that betrayal and deceit could not define me. His friends and colleagues quietly observed, and I could see their perception of him shift. The man they had admired was now exposed for who he truly was. The embarrassment he felt was complete, and I didn't need to gloat or rub it in. Simply presenting the truth had done what I needed it to do. By the time he finally stopped pleading, I knew this was the turning point. I had defended myself, reclaimed what was mine, and ensured he couldn't hurt me again. I felt a deep sense of peace mixed with pride. The betrayal had been painful, but it had led me to this moment of strength and empowerment. I was no longer trapped in fear or shame. I was free, and justice, quiet, smart, and complete, was finally mine. After weeks of preparation and confrontation, I finally secured my financial claims. Everything that had been rightfully mine, savings, property, and shared investments, was returned. I no longer depended on Mark for anything. For the first time, I felt completely independent. It wasn't about the money itself, it was about reclaiming control over my life and knowing that his betrayal couldn't harm me anymore. Mark's humiliation was inevitable. Friends, colleagues, and even some neighbors had witnessed the truth. His lies, manipulation, and selfishness were exposed publicly. People who had once admired him now saw him for who he really was. He tried to regain his image, but it was too late. The personal and professional consequences of his actions caught up with him, and I didn't need to lift a finger. Seeing him face the results of his choices brought a quiet satisfaction, not out of cruelty, but out of justice served. Once the legal matters were settled, I decided to visit the apartment one last time. Walking through the rooms where so many memories had been made, I felt a mix of emotions. It was strange to be there alone, collecting my personal items, knowing that the life I had once shared in this space belonged to the past. Each item I packed, photos, small keepsakes, and everyday belongings, reminded me of how far I had come. I paused often, reflecting on the pain, the lessons, and the strength I had found within myself. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout or taunt. There was no need. The peace I felt came from within, from knowing that I had taken back my life and my dignity. I realized that true victory doesn't come from humiliating someone else, it comes from standing tall, reclaiming your own power, and refusing to be broken. Walking out of the apartment for the last time, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't imagined was possible. The betrayal, heartbreak, and humiliation were behind me. I had survived it all and come out stronger. The weight that had pressed down on me for months was gone. Instead of anger, I felt relief. Instead of fear, I felt confidence. That day marked the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I understood that life doesn't always go as planned, and people can hurt you deeply, but you have the power to rise above it. I had faced betrayal, fought for justice, and reclaimed everything I had lost, not just possessions, but my self-respect and inner peace. As I locked the door behind me, I didn't look back in anger or sadness. I walked away with a quiet strength, knowing that I had endured the worst and come out victorious. The apartment, the memories, and even Mark's betrayal were now part of my past. What mattered most was that I had my life, my independence, and my peace, and nothing could take that away from me. After reclaiming my independence, I focused on building my life even further. My interior design business began to flourish. Clients praised my work, and new opportunities kept coming my way. Every project I completed gave me confidence, and I could feel myself growing stronger, not just professionally but personally. I wasn't just surviving anymore, I was thriving. Even as life improved, I often thought back to the pain I had endured. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and the humiliation were memories that could have broken me. Instead, they became lessons. Each hurtful moment had taught me about resilience, trust, and the importance of valuing myself. I realized that without those experiences, I wouldn't have the strength I now carried. I was no longer afraid of hardship, because I had already faced the worst and survived. One of the most rewarding parts of this new chapter was being able to help others. A friend confided in me about a situation where she had been deceived by someone she trusted. Listening to her story, I could see the pain in her eyes, and I remembered my own journey. I offered guidance and encouragement, sharing the wisdom I had gained. It felt empowering to pass on the lessons I had learned, to help someone else find their strength and hope. It reminded me that my experiences, as painful as they were, could now serve a greater purpose. Some nights, I would sit quietly in my studio after finishing a project, reflecting on how far I had come. I thought about the person I had been, vulnerable, hurt, and unsure, and compared her to the woman I had become. I had endured betrayal, faced it head-on, and emerged stronger. I didn't need validation from anyone like Mark anymore. My sense of worth came from within, from my own accomplishments and the confidence I had built through perseverance. One morning, I stood in front of the mirror, really looking at myself. For the first time in a long time, I saw strength, resilience, and pride reflected back. I smiled at the reflection, knowing that no one could take away the power I had reclaimed. I no longer sought approval from others, and I no longer let anyone's actions define my self-worth. Emotional healing wasn't just about moving on, it was about growing, learning, and finding peace. I had turned my pain into motivation, my heartbreak into clarity, and my betrayal into empowerment. Each day I grew more confident, more independent, and more certain that I could face anything life threw at me. Looking in the mirror, I finally felt whole again, proud of the woman I had become and ready to embrace everything that lay ahead. After months of rebuilding my life, I finally moved into a new apartment. It was small but bright, filled with sunlight and fresh energy. Every corner reflected my independence and my effort to start over. For me, this wasn't just a new place to live, it was a symbol of a fresh start, a life reclaimed from someone who had tried to take everything from me. As I unpacked my things, I reflected on everything that had happened. Betrayal had left deep scars, but I had learned an important lesson. Betrayal can break you, but reclaiming yourself is the real revenge. I realized that true power doesn't come from hurting someone else, it comes from standing tall, living with dignity, and refusing to let anyone else define your worth. I quietly settled into my new life. Each day was a reminder of my resilience. I worked on my interior design projects, built my reputation, and created a schedule that balanced work, rest, and personal growth. I didn't need to flaunt my success or prove anything to anyone. My satisfaction came from living authentically and fully. Mark was no longer part of my life, and I didn't dwell on him. He was just a memory, a lesson that had shaped me but no longer controlled me. Small joys became important. I decorated my apartment the way I wanted, made plans with friends, and focused on opportunities that excited me. I felt peaceful for the first time in years. The fear, the hurt, and the humiliation had faded, replaced by a quiet strength and confidence I hadn't known I could have. I had taken everything life threw at me and turned it into motivation, determination, and growth. One morning, I walked into my new office for a big project I had been planning for months. The space was mine, organized the way I liked, and filled with designs that represented my creativity and hard work. I paused for a moment, looking around and smiling. I felt proud of my accomplishments, proud of the woman I had become. I was free from the shadows of the past, and nothing could take that feeling away. That smile wasn't just about success, it was about freedom, strength, and peace. I had faced betrayal, fought for justice, and rebuilt my life from the ground up. I realized that life's challenges can be devastating, but they also have the power to make you stronger. By choosing resilience and self-respect, I had transformed my pain into a life I could be proud of. As I settled into my chair and began working, I felt a sense of completion and closure. I had survived the heartbreak, reclaimed my dignity, and created a future full of hope and opportunity. Walking into that office, smiling at everything I had achieved, I finally felt truly free, stronger, wiser, and ready for whatever came next. My past with Mark no longer mattered. What mattered was me, my life, and the endless possibilities ahead.